Hey, all. Today we're going to continue talking about the lengths of segments as they relate to circles, and today we are going to talk about chords. So if you remember from earlier in the year, or even if you don't, that's okay. We talked about chords. Chords are segments that touch the circle twice, and they stay inside the circle. So here we have two chords. We have this chord here. I'll do my best to draw this straight. The purplish chord, and then we have this orangish chord. And so they intersect. And before we talked about the angles that were formed where they intersect. And now we're going to talk about the lengths of the segments that are formed because they intersect. So when these two chords, so we have two chords, when they intersect, so when they cross, they create four smaller segments. So we have segment 1, segment 2, segment 3, and segment 4. And so if I label them going around in a circle, sort of like that, let me choose maybe a color we can see better. And I'm going to erase these colors now. If we label them going around in a circle, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and just be careful, don't get confused with me labeling the segment and how long the segment is. So this just happened to be the 4th segment, and it is 4 units long. Okay, so hopefully we can avoid confusion there. Just be careful. I have this relationship that exists. If I take these two smaller segments, segments 1 and 3, they come from the same chord. If I multiply their lengths together, so I'm going to say part 1 times part 3, the two odd numbered parts, and then part 2 times part 4, the two even numbered parts. So we're going to multiply the odd numbered parts and the even numbered parts. And again, that only works if we sort of number the segments going around in a circle. So I'm going to multiply 6 times 6, part 1 and part 3, and part 2 is x, and part 4 happens to be 4. And we have an equation now that can help us figure out how long part 2 is. So 6 times 6 is 36. I can rewrite x times 4 is 4x. And then finally, we are going to divide both sides by 4 and find that that part that we are missing, part 2, is 9 units long. So there are other ways to think about this relationship. This is just one way. If this way works for you, then you should use this way every time, and you will reinforce this method so that you can apply it correctly when we ask you to without any help on a test. So I'm going to use this method. I'm going to label going around in a circle. And it doesn't matter where you start, so I can start and call this part 1. So then I go around in my circle, that's part 2, that's part 3, and that is part 4. There's 4 pieces that I'm looking at. And so I want to multiply the odd numbered parts by the even numbered parts, or by each other, and the even numbered parts by each other. So I might actually shorten this to P1 times P3, P2 times P4. And so 1 is 16, 3 is x, 2 is 24, part 4 is 10. So I get 16x and 240. And then the last step usually is to divide. We'll divide both sides by 16 to find x, to find part 3, the way I labeled it, to be 15. So again, We should practice the method every time that we do it, so we are reinforcing the method. We should write some sort of equation or relationship, even though it's pretty informal to write P1, P3. Writing a relationship, marking up a picture, showing all our steps and practicing our algebra. That's what reinforces these ideas so that we can do it quicker and easier in the future. And I will go again. I have part 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, just by chance, part 4 is 4 units long, so just be careful. So again, I'm multiplying the odd number parts, and those will be equal to the even number parts multiplied. I can plug in. As I labeled it, part 1 is 8, part 3 is 5, part 2 is x, and part 4 again is 4, and we're being careful. So over here we get 40. X times 4 we'll write as 4x. And then we can divide both sides by 4 to find out that that missing part is 10 units long. So as always, as usual, if any of this confused you or got you stuck, please do ask for help before moving on to the problems we'd like you to try on your own. Figure out those errors before, or those things that are confusing before you move on, and try them by yourself. So if you're ready to go, if you've asked for help because you needed it, or you felt confident after seeing me do those 3 problems, please do try these 2. Choose the correct answer. Please make sure you choose the, be careful when choosing your answers in case they're shuffled. Take your time on these. If you get stuck while you're working on them, as ever, please do ask for help. So hopefully you got A and C. If you didn't, call one of us over so we can talk about maybe where you made a mistake and sort that out. If you got them both right, well done. Please move on to the practice. And once you get your answer or questions answered, you should also move on to the practice. Take your time on these. There's 8 of them as always. They're multiple choice this time. So make sure that when you are choosing your answer on Edpuzzle, you choose the letter that you of the right answer.